The deep bass of electronic music filled the nightclub as Nez Perce, 20, made his way toward the brightly lit stage. His presence was quiet, but his eyes couldn't stray from the central dancer. Halion, 30, was a figure of raw magnetism. His body seemed sculpted for attention, each movement sending a collective shiver through the crowd. When Nez first entered the nightclub, it was more out of curiosity than desire, but seeing Halion changed something within him. His friends laughed and encouraged him to get closer, but he hesitated, preferring to watch from a distance. The dancer seemed untouchable, a star shining under strobe lights. Halion noticed the young man among the crowd. He had a natural talent for identifying gazes worth exploring. Nez was different. There was a purity in his expression, something Halion wasn't used to seeing in his world of excess and performance. After the show, Halion stepped off the stage, exuding unshakable confidence. He knew Nez's attention was his, but made sure to feign a casual encounter at the bar. "Did you enjoy the show?" he asked with a smile that seemed as genuine as it was dangerous. Nez, caught off guard, stammered something about how impressive Halion's moves were. His awkward reaction drew a laugh from the dancer. "Good to know. Maybe I'll see you here again," Halion said before disappearing into the crowd. That night, Nez couldn't sleep. He replayed the brief moment in his mind, analyzing every word and smile. Halion seemed more than just a performer. He was a mystery Nez was determined to uncover. Meanwhile, Halion, counting his tip money in the dressing room, was already planning how to use Nez's fascination to his advantage. He had experience turning admiration into opportunity, and this young man seemed like the perfect target. Nez returned to the nightclub the next night, nervous and excited. He convinced himself he was there for the music, but deep down, he knew it was for Halion. This time, he stood closer to the stage, making his interest clear. Halion recognized him immediately, but pretended to be surprised to see him again. During a break, he approached Nez, holding a glass of whiskey like it was part of his act. "Didn't know you were a regular," he commented with a teasing smile. "I just thought I'd come back." "The music's good," Nez replied, trying to sound casual, but the sincerity in his eyes betrayed his intentions. Halion smiled, placing a hand on Nez's shoulder. "I'm glad you came back. Want me to show you backstage?" Nez accepted without hesitation. In the dressing room, their conversation flowed with unexpected ease. Halion talked about the challenges of his profession, while Nez shared details about his academic life and cultural heritage. Halion listened intently, absorbing every detail he could later use. Their closeness grew quickly. Halion, always calculating, offered his phone number to Nez, suggesting they hang out outside the club. Nez felt as if he'd won the lottery. When Nez left that night, his heart raced. He'd never felt such a connection before. To Halion, though, it was just the start of another game he planned to win. Halion began texting Nez, striking the perfect balance between flirting and casual conversation. He knew how to keep the young man hooked, offering just enough to leave him wanting more. Nez, on the other hand, dove headfirst into what he believed to be a genuine romance. He started frequenting the nightclub religiously, always hoping Halion would notice him. And Halion always did because he knew exactly how to fan the flames of Nez's infatuation. One night, Halion invited Nez to a quiet cafe. It was a strategic move to create an air of normalcy in their relationship. During the conversation, Halion subtly brought up his financial struggles, mentioning an overdue rent payment. Nez offered help without hesitation. I have some savings. I can lend you the money if you need it. Hallion hesitated, as if reluctant to accept, but eventually agreed. You're amazing, you know that? He said, holding Neese's hand. From that moment on, their relationship deepened. Nez believed he was helping someone he loved, while Hallion saw an opportunity to secure more financial stability for himself. Despite his calculated approach, Hallion began feeling something different. Nez wasn't like the others, and that unsettled him, but he ignored those feelings, determined to stay focused on his goals. The days turned into weeks, and the bond between Hallion and Nez Perce seemed to grow stronger. Hallion maintained the facade of a devoted lover, while Nez fell deeper into his trust. He began accompanying Hallion not just to the nightclub, but also on small outings around the city. To Nez, it felt like living a dream. One starry night, as they walked through a park, Hallion dropped a well-rehearsed confession. I've always wanted more out of life. You know, something that makes me feel fulfilled. He sighed, looking away. But it feels like life keeps pulling me down. Like I'll never get out of this. Moved, Nez held his hand. You don't have to do it alone. I can help you. We can build something together. Hallion smiled, a smile that hid ulterior motives. He knew it was exactly what he needed to hear. Nez Perce started to wonder about Hallion's life before the nightclub. One evening, while they were together, he casually asked, Have you always wanted to be a dancer? You seem so passionate about it. Hallion hesitated before answering. Not exactly. It was more something that happened, a way to survive. He looked away, avoiding the depth of the question. But now, I think I've found a reason to keep going. Though the romantic undertone was evident, Nez felt something odd. There was a disconnect in Hallion's words, as if he was dodging a truth. Still, Nez chose to ignore it, clinging to the belief that he could be the support Hallion needed. In the days that followed, Hallion made more requests for help. He claimed he needed money to invest in his career. Specialized dance classes, new costumes for performances, and even connections to high-profile gigs. Nez, trusting every word, gave without hesitation. Meanwhile, Hallion began to notice the consequences of his actions. He couldn't look into Nez's eyes without feeling a pang of guilt. Every affectionate gesture from the young man was a reminder of how much he was taking from someone who wanted nothing but the best for him. But greed still spoke louder. Hallion convinced himself he was only taking advantage of an opportunity, like anyone else would. It's a harsh world, he told himself. If I don't take this chance, someone else will. On the other side, Nez started seeking advice from his close friends. He wanted to understand if it was normal for a relationship to demand so many sacrifices. The answers he received were a mix of support and concern. If he loves you, why does he need so much money? Was the question that lingered in Nez's mind. One night, Nez decided to visit the nightclub without telling Hallion. He wanted to observe the environment from a distance, searching for something that might confirm or dispel his doubts. While there, he overheard a conversation between two employees about Hallion. He's got another sucker paying his bills, one of them laughed. That guy's good at what he does. Always finds a way to turn things in his favor. Nez felt his chest tighten. He knew they were talking about Hallion. That same night, he confronted Hallion, but with a calm demeanor. Have you ever had other relationships like this where someone had to help you out? Nez asked, his tone casual but his heart racing. Halion, sensing the trap, gave vague answers, but Nez already had his suspicions confirmed. Determined to uncover the full truth, Nez hired a private investigator. The findings were devastating. Halion had a history of exploiting wealthy partners, leaving behind a trail of disappointment and debt. Nez realized he was just another pawn in Halion's game. Heartbroken, Nez refused to wallow in self-pity. Instead, he began devising a plan. He wouldn't let Halion walk away unscathed. If this was a game, Nez would turn the tables. Meanwhile, Halion started experiencing emotions he never expected. Real love. He found himself genuinely caring for Nez in a way he hadn't for anyone else. But the damage was already done, and he didn't know how to undo it. Nez Perce continued to play his role as the devoted boyfriend, carefully concealing his growing mistrust. His plan required precision, and he knew that any slip-up could alert Halion and ruin everything. He made sure to shower Halion with affection, keeping his doubts hidden beneath smiles and gestures of love. It wasn't easy. Each time Halion spoke about their future or offered one of his well-practiced compliments, Nez felt a mixture of anger and sadness. But he kept his emotions in check, determined to see his plan through. Nez began planting seeds of opportunity, subtly steering conversations toward ideas of business and financial growth. "Have you ever thought about doing something outside the club?" he asked one evening, sitting across from Halion in a dimly lit restaurant. "You're so talented. I'm sure you could run your own show." Halion leaned back in his chair, the idea clearly appealing to him. "I've thought about it," he replied, swirling the wine in his glass. "But starting something like that isn't easy. It takes a lot of resources, connections. It's not something I can just jump into." Nez nodded, feigning sympathy. "If anyone could do it, it's you. Maybe I could help. I've been thinking about investing in something meaningful." He watched as Halion's eyes lit up, the greed flickering just beneath the surface. Over the following weeks, Nez carefully constructed his trap. He created false documents, detailed investment plans, and even went as far as fabricating an account that looked like it belonged to a legitimate venture. He worked late at night, poring over every detail to ensure Halion wouldn't suspect a thing. He knew that Halion's confidence in his ability to manipulate others would be his downfall. Halion, oblivious to the deception, began to buy into the fantasy. He spoke excitedly about the club they would supposedly open together, imagining the acclaim and fortune it would bring him. "It'll be a place unlike anything else," he told Nez one night, his enthusiasm palpable. "Everyone will know my name." To reinforce the illusion, Nez encouraged him at every turn, even suggesting they scout locations and meet with supposed business contacts. Halion, caught up in his own ambitions, didn't notice the subtle shifts in Nez's demeanor, the way his smiles didn't quite reach his eyes, or how he avoided certain topics. Behind the scenes, Nez continued to ensure that every piece of the puzzle was in place. He enlisted the help of legal experts to draft ironclad contracts that would return all the money Halion had taken. Each step brought him closer to the moment he would finally take back control. On the day of the nightclub's supposed opening, Halion woke up brimming with anticipation. He dressed meticulously, imagining himself standing in the spotlight as the owner of an exclusive venue. The thought of finally achieving the lifestyle he believed he deserved filled him with pride. As he arrived at the address Nez had given him, his confidence faltered. The building was empty, its windows dark and uninviting. Nez stood outside, dressed impeccably, his expression calm but unreadable. "Where is everyone?" Halion asked, confusion creeping into his voice. Nez handed him a folder, his movements deliberate and precise. "Take a look," he said simply. Halion opened the folder, scanning the documents inside. The realization hit him like a blow. The contract he'd signed wasn't an investment agreement. It was a meticulously crafted legal trap. Every penny he'd taken from Nez was accounted for, documented, and now legally tied to Nez's name. This can't be real," Halion stammered, his voice trembling. "It's very real," Nez replied, his voice steady. "You thought you were playing me, but you've been playing yourself." Halion's mind raced as he tried to grasp the enormity of his situation. He searched Nez's face for any sign of the love and trust he'd exploited, but all he saw was quiet resolve. "I can explain," he began, but Nez raised a hand to stop him. "I don't want your explanations," Nez said firmly. "I gave you everything, my trust, my heart, my support, and you used it against me. This is the end, Halion. You'll face the consequences of your choices." For the first time, Halion was at a loss for words. His charm, his confidence, his manipulative tactics, they were useless against the unyielding truth Nez had laid bare. The days stretched into weeks, and for Halion, life became a monotonous grind. Stripped of the luxuries he had once taken for granted, he now spent his time working at a small cafe on the edge of town. The job was humbling. Cleaning tables, taking orders, and dealing with impatient customers. But it was the only option left after his reputation had been tarnished. Every moment was a bitter reminder of how far he had fallen. At night, he would lie awake in his modest studio apartment, the ceiling staring back at him like an unrelenting judge. His thoughts were a relentless loop, replaying every choice that had led him here. He thought about Nez constantly, his smile, his unwavering trust, and the quiet pain in his eyes when the truth had finally come to light. Halion wondered if Nez had forgiven him or if he was just a distant memory now, one best left forgotten. One evening, after finishing a particularly long shift, Halion found himself wandering the streets of the city. The neon lights, once a symbol of his glamorous lifestyle, now felt cold and distant. He passed by the nightclub where he had performed, the sound of music spilling out onto the sidewalk. Through the window, he saw a new dancer on the stage, drawing the same kind of adoration he had once commanded. The sight was like a dagger to his chest. He turned away quickly, the weight of his loss pressing heavily on his shoulders. His steps carried him aimlessly until he found himself in the park where he and Nez had once walked under the stars. He sat on a bench, staring at the empty path, his mind filled with memories of that night. Halion's thoughts turned to the man he had become and the man he had pretended to be. For so long, he had used charm and manipulation to get what he wanted, never stopping to consider the cost. Nez had been different, a light in his otherwise selfish world. For a brief moment, Halion had felt something real, something he hadn't experienced in years. And yet, he had destroyed it with his greed and deceit. Across town, Nez was thriving. The heartbreak he had endured had shaped him, pushing him to grow stronger and more self-assured. He had started volunteering at a community center, helping young people navigate the complexities of relationships and self-worth. Sharing his story with others gave him a sense of purpose, and each day felt like a step toward healing. One afternoon, as Halion was working the cafe register, the bell over the door jingled, signaling a new customer. He looked up, and froze. Nays had walked in, his presence commanding without effort. He was with a small group of friends, their laughter filling the space. Hallian's heart raced as he tried to decide what to do. Nays didn't notice him at first, too engrossed in a conversation with one of his friends. Hallian's instinct was to hide, but there was nowhere to go. He decided to stay still, hoping to avoid any interaction. But as Nez approached the counter, their eyes met. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Hallian opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Nays regarded him with a look that was neither cold nor warm, just calm, as if he were staring at someone he had once known but no longer recognized. "Hi," Nez said, his tone polite but distant.
"Hi," Hallian replied, his voice barely audible. He wanted to say more, to explain himself, to apologize, but the words caught in his throat. Nays didn't linger, placing his order quickly before stepping aside to rejoin his friends. Hallian watched as Nays laughed and chatted, his energy radiant. It was clear he had moved on, leaving the pain of their past behind. For Hallian, the encounter was bittersweet. It was comforting to see Nez happy, but it also underscored how far removed he was from that joy. That night, Hallian replayed the moment in his mind over and over. He imagined what he could have said, how he might have asked for forgiveness or told Nez about the regret that haunted him every day. But deep down, he knew no words would have been enough. Nez had rebuilt himself, and Hallian was a relic of a life he no longer needed. Determined to find some semblance of redemption, Hallian began volunteering at a shelter for at-risk youth. He hoped to use his experience to guide others away from the path he had taken. Each time he shared his story, it felt like a small penance, though it could never erase the pain he had caused. But even as he tried to move forward, the memory of Nez lingered like a shadow. Hallian often wondered if he would ever find peace, or if his mistakes would forever define him. He knew he could never go back to the life he had lived, nor could he undo the damage he had wrought. Months later, while walking through the park again, Hallian saw Nays in the distance. He was sitting on a bench reading a book, the late afternoon sunlight casting a golden glow around him. Hallian hesitated, his heart aching with a mixture of longing and guilt. He considered approaching, but something stopped him. Nez looked content, at peace. Hallian realized that interrupting him would be selfish, an attempt to soothe his own conscience rather than offer anything meaningful to Nez. So he stood there for a moment longer, then turned and walked away. As he walked, Hallian whispered to himself, "I loved him too late." The words hung in the air, carried away by the wind. In that moment, he accepted that some chances, once lost, could never be regained. Nez, unaware of Hallian's presence, continued to read, the sunlight warming his face. His life was far from perfect, but it was his own. And that, he had learned, was enough. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more like it, don't forget to follow the channel. We bring you new stories every day, each one packed with twists, emotions, and unforgettable moments. Did this story resonate with you? Let us know in the comments what you thought about it. Your feedback means the world to us. And if you have a story of your own that you'd like to see turned into a video, share it with us in the comments or reach out directly. Who knows? Your story could be the inspiration for our next episode. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.